So, good afternoon. We are starting up this afternoon session just a little after the hour. I wanted to give time for more folks to log in, just in case. But our scheduled tech talk this afternoon is on Cisco Umbrella. Not Umbrella Corporation, but the Umbrella tool that Cisco now provides as a service. And we're going to talk a little bit about why do we care, what does this tool do, and then we'll talk about how does it work, and how easy it really is to implement. Again, just like this morning, I'm still Andrew Stibbards, still work here for Sunset Learning Institute. This is just something that's come up in some of our classes. There's a little bit of training about it out in the world, but nothing too specific yet. So again, we're just trying to fill in the gaps here and try to make sure everybody has something to read, something to watch. So first off, what's the problem that we're addressing here? The big idea with Cisco Umbrella is it's a cybersecurity tool. There are a couple types of attacks that we're worried about in our environment. A couple of them mentioned up here, like DNS-based attacks. Fast flux and DGA, the domain generation algorithm. Somewhere around 90% of attacks, 90% of malware references DNS at some point in its life cycle. That's a pretty huge number. That was coming out of some of the 2016, 2017 reports from Cisco, Verizon's annual security reports. As we move to 2018, moving into 2019, we're still up there in the 85 to 90% range. And so why is that so interesting? Well, DNS is critical to what you and I want to do. Remember, DNS, domain name system, those mappings of names to numbers. You got your A records, your MX records, the individual server you're querying for, the mail server you're querying for. Your individual user generates dozens of DNS requests any given day. We've talked about the basic DNS query and reply of what is the IP address behind a given name. And so we expect DNS to be working, to be active out in our environment. So what do the attackers do? The attackers leverage that same protocol in order to use it for malicious purposes. So that's what we're worried about, because you can't just say no DNS traffic, because we need DNS for our valid users and their valid traffic. The problem arises when someone uses DNS for malicious purposes. So there's been some recent news about this. You got IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. They're generally over all the DNS domains and the root registries, the leasing out the spaces. They've had some recommendations lately about hosted DNS servers using what's called DNSSEC, DNS secure extensions, where that's going to provide authentication and encryption standards around DNS. That will helpfully mitigate some of what we're seeing. But until that gets fully implemented everywhere, there's still the concept that the DNS gets used for some attacks like data exfiltration. Actually, let me just go through some of these and we'll talk about some of the ways that DNS gets used as the attack and then how Umbrella fixes this. So first off, fast flux DGA. Fast flux is when an attacker uses a DNS server. They're out on the internet somewhere. They're using DNS to establish command and control, to communicate into an environment, and they keep changing the IP addresses behind a DNS record. And so it's a little harder to track down exactly who you're talking to. DGA, domain generation algorithm, that's where they randomly and quickly generate what looks like bogus DNS records for the same IP address. All right, the subdomain just looks totally random, but it's actually a higher level domain that's actually the critical piece there. And so are those able to be detected by humans? Absolutely. It's a changed IP address. It's a randomly generated string for the DGA. But the time it takes for us as a human, as a security analyst to go in and verify that that's actually occurring. In that time frame, the attacker is leveraging that. When it comes to a lot of malware, we're concerned about command and control, CNC. A couple different types of attacks, stagers, rootkits. A stager would be the initial stage, maybe a lightweight piece of malware that's designed to get the entire payload, the entire attack later. A rootkit would be something that's going after the root privileges of your operating system, Windows, Linux, so on. A lot of those tools don't necessarily have their full functionality or have all of their commands, what they're supposed to do, in their initial packaging. All right, maybe that file becomes a little too large. Maybe the attacker wants to live control a device. You hear about botnets. Malware gets in, infects a device, and then there's commands telling that botnet what to do. Well, that's all command and control traffic. Whether the stager, the botnet, it's reaching out to a internet relay chat server, it's reaching out to a DNS server, querying what should I do, and then the replies come back with the command and control traffic or the full exploit. When it comes to exploit kits scan your devices for potential vulnerabilities. All right, and so that's where fast flux combined with exploit kits, it's a pretty serious threat. As your users are out there on the internet, they're clicking on links and they're clicking on ads, which nobody should be doing. They get redirected to different web pages, and then there's DNS lookups for those web pages. And on those malicious pages, there's an exploit kit, which is scanning what's the operating system that just came to this web page, what's the browser that just came to this web page, is there any Java, Flash plugins, are there any exploits in there that I can serve up a pre-packaged exploit. So a lot of DNS gets used there. When you're clicking on a link, usually there's a domain name associated with a link, and then there's a DNS lookup. All right, so DNS gets behind everything we're doing there. So for all these reasons, whether it's the actual attack itself, command and control traffic, integration with exploit kits. Oh, one more. Last one, I promise. Exfiltration of data. Absolutely. Let's say the malware's already on site. It's already infected. Just as an example, let's say Bob, or class say Bob and Alice. Bob's laptop is infected. He got infected at home, so you had no way of preventing that. It just, his kid was downloading something off of LimeWire. And so Bob's laptop has malware on it. The DNS queries and replies could be not just command and control traffic telling it what the malware to do. It could also be using the DNS query, that outbound message, to send data outbound, send out credit card information, send out email information, and then the reply is just the request for more information. So it's potentially command and control, partially attack. It could be the data actually leaving the environment. That's where the APTs, the advanced persistent threats, that's where they come in. That low data rate, long-term, slow exfiltration. There you go. So for all these reasons, that's where we need Cisco Umbrella. It is a cybersecurity tool designed to protect our environments from these types of attacks. So how does it work? First off, we point our networks at Umbrella. All right, and this is, I mentioned it down here, it's very easy to integrate, all right, because it's a cloud-based solution. You don't have to rack and stack, don't have to worry about code updates. It's all just out in the cloud. For mobile clients, like for Apple, you've got an app. It also integrates with AnyConnect, so that even when it's a client outside of the firewall, out in the world, it's still directing its traffic to Umbrella to be verified. And it acts by checking our DNS queries, checking the responses against known malicious threats, against known problems. And it's got three main types of ratings for sites, for domains you're querying for: trusted, malicious, and risky. So trusted sites, those will be ones that it's in the name, we trust. Like everyone uses Salesforce, Office 365, Gmail, all right? Those are all sites on the internet that are usually pretty safe, right? There's an assumption of trust based on the size of that organization and what it provides. So part of the way Umbrella guarantees to not impact your day-to-day service is that trusted sites like that, it doesn't do any filtration. Because you're querying for google.com. We assume Google's going to have its DNS records up to date. They're monitoring their own DNS records and so on. So trusted traffic just goes right through. Known malicious traffic. We're querying for malicious domains. We're getting responses back from malicious sites. That can be filtered right in the cloud. So the attack, the potential malware, the malicious reply, whatever's happening, that response, the responses are proxying through Cisco Umbrella, and it's able to filter and stop that response before it even gets to your firewall. So firewalls are still important, but we don't have to worry about everything hitting that firewall. And then for risky ratings, then we do Cisco Umbrella, not myself, I don't work for Cisco, I was using the third party there. When Cisco sees a risky site rating, where it's a website that's serving up both trusted and malicious content, that's where deeper inspection comes into play. So what would be trusted and malicious? That would be some website where, let's say it's a third-party email server, and that's totally fine, it's just email. But some of the ads that they're providing have links to known malicious domains. So on one hand, you've got actual good traffic. On the other hand, it might potentially link to something malicious, depending upon where the user clicks. All right, so that's a combination of that. It's called risky. So if we see something going through a risky site, that's where we start looking at deeper inspection. Umbrella integrates with Talos. So Cisco Talos, the threat intelligence group with Cisco, they do a lot of, call them threat-centric, a lot of threat hunting. All right, they're a threat intelligence feed where they push out updates about new signatures, new rules, new definitions, whatever terminology you want to use for firewalls, for IPS and IDS, for SIEM systems. You guys know SIEM? Security Information Event Management. That's your overall, that's back in the SOC, the Security Operations Center. That's your management and aggregation tool for the security side of things, for the logs coming off our devices. So with your NOC, your Network Operations Centers, you look at your overall network management tools like SNMP is a pretty classic example. SolarWinds, SpiceWorks, Cisco Prime. SIEM systems are more security focused, so like Security Onion and Splunk would be tools there. So Talos, they're a threat intelligence group. They will have more information than just yes, no, that domain is trusted or malicious. They can go in and look for, do we have anything deeper, like WBRS, the web-based reputation scores. It's kind of like the white pages of the internet, where if you plug in an IP address, you plug in a domain, you can get the internet reputation of that IP address, of that domain. And the idea there is, what has everybody else been seeing? I like to say this in some of my cybersecurity courses. It's not you against the internet. It's every valid legal network against the internet, all right? Because we're all connected to the internet, and we're all seeing some of the same attacks and similar problems, and so we're sharing our information so everyone has a bigger picture for security. That's where the reputation scores come in. You may have just seen this initial potentially malicious domain. Someone else in the world probably saw it first, maybe saw it first, and so we're leveraging everybody's information. So that risky site gets that deeper inspection compared against more feeds. Also AMP, the advanced malware protection, you can absolutely do deeper inspection, full inspection on whatever traffic is coming back. In addition to that, all right, so we're checking DNS. You can also leverage Umbrella. So you're pointing your network out to it. And so it's acting as a web proxy, acting as a DNS proxy. You can also start using it for content filtration. for your acceptable use policy. So let's say you don't want to allow social media, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever. It's a waste of time, right? It's purely a personal opinion. But based on your company policy, you could say, while you're on the company network, we do not want, using a company device, we don't want you to go to those types of websites. And so you can update the content filtration lists. You can do blacklisting or whitelisting. You can have exclusions for super users or times of day. And you can say that those sites should not be allowed to go to. And so based on that, if a user ever queries, tries to go to one of those websites, Umbrella just drops it, or can return a response page indicating that the traffic was not allowed because it doesn't fall within the policy. So it's not just protecting you from what's out in the world, it's also stopping your users from going to sites you don't want them to go to. They've also got their regular DNS resolvers. They also came out with family-friendly centric ones. So for more small, mid-sized, not really a compliance size, but more if you want to use this for a home environment, there's use cases for all different sizes of networks. The more family-friendly ones have some built-in content filtration for filtering things like pornography, for example. Or you can just use the regular DNS resolvers, the regular Umbrella addresses for general malicious traffic out on the internet. Where this also starts coming into play, I forgot to put this up here, it can look for that command and control traffic. It can look for the data exfiltration that's occurring, because maybe the attack happened elsewhere. Maybe we didn't see the user going to the malicious websites. It was already infected. Bob's infected. But then when Bob's computer tries to use DNS to exfiltrate his credit card information, Umbrella can catch that, stop it so it doesn't go out to the rest of the internet, and generate notifications to us that it has found what looks like an infected host, generating that exfiltration traffic in our environment. We can then tie that into our local SIEM system. So Security Onion, Splunk, we have APIs where as we internally are updating our filters, our rules, updating our acceptable use policy, that can in turn push out and update our filtration with Umbrella. So it's a global service, but it's tailored to each organization. It's tailored to each deployment for how much or how little filtration you actually want. There's the general idea everyone doesn't want malware, hopefully. No one wants malware unless you're running it in the sandbox. All right, but beyond that, for the content filtration, every site's different. Every policy is different. So really, who does this apply to? Not kidding when I say everyone, all right? Because DNS is so integral in everything we do, not just enterprise, all right? When we talk about DNS, you got Bob, he's in his corporate laptop, he's going out to Salesforce, DNS gets involved there. When we talk about the Internet of Things, here's something that should be on everyone's radar. Remember Internet of Things, Internet of Stuff, it's just other stuff that was not on your network before. So that starts to include more and more all of these devices at our houses. All right, so we've got our doorbells now with an Amazon Ring. We've got all these GE and Samsung microwaves and refrigerators with cameras and voice control. You've got your lights and you had your heating and air conditioning, your garage door. It's all integrated, right? It's all on the Wi-Fi and it's all controlled by your smartphone apps. And through dynamic DNS, we can create DNS records for all those IoT devices out on the internet. So what do attackers do? They leverage vulnerabilities in dynamic DNS servers, default credentials, in order to attack your home environment, your IoT devices. And absolutely, you hear about it about once a month now. You hear a story about somebody hacking a baby monitor, or someone hacking maybe it was a default credentials, attacking a doorbell. But if it's coming in from an IP address that's not normal, it's coming in from a domain that's not trusted, we can flag that to say, that's not right. Let's interrupt that traffic and generate a notification. So as we get more into the Internet of Things, 5G cellular, narrowband IoT wireless networks are coming online more and more with this concept of just everything being connected everywhere, needing security around this DNS tool that helps tie it all together. It's getting critical and is critical now. So everyone, like I said, even home environments, yes, we should be looking at this. So what does this, with the Cisco specific side, ISR, ASR, Meraki, mobile clients, integrates with AnyConnect, all of their solutions we can integrate with Umbrella. Well, it's a classic enterprise model. You got your laptops and cell phones out in the world. Like I said, there's apps. There's also an AnyConnect client where you can say if you use AnyConnect to access the corporate network out in the world, we can also update AnyConnect to redirect through Umbrella. Nothing to install hardware-wise. We just have to purchase a plan, set up the account, and start updating our hardware. Maybe get an app and just direct the traffic through Umbrella. One use case for this. There was a conference in Las Vegas, as some conferences usually are. It was, I believe it was a black hat conference where a bunch of very intelligent people, very security-minded individuals, all came together for a conference on about how to hack things. And the conference organizers, they went to the conference center that they were hosting it at, and they said, turn off your Wi-Fi. You do not want to be providing Wi-Fi to these individuals this week. And so then the conference organizers provided their own wireless network. They set up their own APs, so separate physical implementation, separate routers and switches, and you know what they used? They took everybody's traffic in that they was using their Wi-Fi, and they funneled it all through Umbrella. And they were able to identify some very interesting things. That's how Cisco was able to gain a lot of information as well about what to look for out in the world. They put all the security-minded individuals in one room and then funneled all their traffic through one tool. Pretty great way to catch stuff. So your overall process, from your client's perspective, they don't see a difference. They type in a cool website, Cisco.com. They've never been there before. Their friend told them about this cool website. Goes through Umbrella, not just going out to any other public DNS server, not Google, not 8888. We reference Umbrella. And the cool thing here, it uses Anycast routing. Anycast it's coming online more and more with IPv6, but it's here with IPv4. The concept is you've got multiple servers providing the same service, but on the same IP address. So it's kind of like multicast, right, where you got multiple devices, all the same IP address. But instead of the traffic going to all of them, Anycast routes the traffic to the closest device on that address. So Cisco Umbrella has data centers all over the world. They're serving billions of DNS records every single, I want to say week, month. They're serving millions of clients. And they're all referencing the same 5 or 6 IP addresses because it's the same IP address no matter which server you're talking to. It's just routed to the closest one. So what does that mean for you if you choose to use the solution? If one of their data centers goes down, there's another data center that's referencing the exact same IP address, which has a backup of your content filters ready to go. So your users don't see a difference. Your security doesn't stop unless every single Umbrella center around the world went down at the exact same time. Highly unlikely, right? So it's routed to your closest Umbrella data center. We check against known malicious sites, check the content filtration, acceptable use policy, and if it's a friendly site and it's within the acceptable use policy, hand it off. No need to filter, no need to inspect. It is good traffic, but if it doesn't, check the intelligence feeds, check the reputation scores, check back with the administrator. Do we want to create an exception? Do we want to allow this through? And then when we get responses coming back from those risky sites, deeper pack inspection. Run it through, as I walked in front of the slide, run it through the antivirus, run it through AMP, the Advanced Malware Protection, where maybe we might talk to that site, but we're definitely going to inspect what's coming back from those sites. As a solution, as a whole, this is a pretty great tool. All right, it's a great way to prevent attacks from occurring. You might have heard about the cyber kill chain, the process of events that usually occurs when an attack is occurring. There's reconnaissance, when someone is choosing who to attack. There's the weaponization, the creation of the attack itself. The delivery, getting it on site. The exploitation, where it actually takes effect, it exploits the vulnerability on site. Potentially, installation, achieving persistence, staying in your environment, but then actions on objectives. The actual exfiltration of data, the actual shutdown of your environment. What was their end goal? All right. Don't worry, it's not an exam somewhere. This is just extra information. Cyber kill chain. It's a couple of different steps. DNS gets used in the reconnaissance stage, learning about who you are, trying to get information. DNS gets used in the weaponization, the delivery, our command and control. Is this a multi-stage attack? How is this going to apply? For the actual actions on objectives, maybe it's exfiltration of data. DNS is a great tool there. So at all these different steps that attackers usually take, it's the process of an attack. If we can stop DNS from being used, you break the chain, you prevent them from getting to their end goal. So everyone, every organization, no matter what size, should look at either this as a tool or some other tool like this, because we like DNS, but we also still like being protected from attacks that are out there. And then, of course, if something has already been affected, the malware is already present, and it's already actions on objectives, they're trying to exfiltrate information, they're trying to push commands into the device. If we can see that going through Umbrella, that can be interrupted, we get notifications, and that sometimes that is the indicator of compromise that we need to get in there and start working. So, great tool. Highly recommend everybody check it out. As usual, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat box or